to be along with you on this Monday morning. Hope that you are doing well, and wherever you are in the world, that your Monday is off to a great start. I'm coming to you from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and would love to see you chime in and tell us where you are in the world, wherever you might be watching on all of our channels or listening on the podcast later. I'm flying solo this week, as I did last week, and I think I probably will be for the next few weeks because our fearless leader Doug Paget and producer Dan are on the We the People ride. Vote Common Good is sponsoring a bike ride that began in San Diego, California, and will end up in St. Augustine, Florida. And we are riding along the southern border to try to bring some attention and energy and focus to the reality that we desperately need a common good immigration and border policy. And that there is so much to learn simply by getting to the border, hearing people's stories, and seeing for yourself what is happening. And so the team has been, they've made it to El Paso, and I think are heading out from El Paso this morning. They're going 30, 40, 50, 60 miles a day on the bikes and cruising along. You can follow along on social media. You can check out the We the People Ride website, which is wethepeopleride.org, and learn all about what's happening and where Doug is and where Dan is and where my wife is going to be in a week or so. And such a great thing that's taken place, and something that's just tremendously important. I'm drinking my coffee this morning from my Victory Monday mug, as you can see. That's in reference to my Cleveland Browns, not my Arkansas Razorbacks. But that is what that is. Well, listen, this is the podcast where we talk about politics and the news in how it is related to politics through the lens of the political implications of what's taking place in the news. And I got to tell you that as I came out of the weekend and began a new week today, as I was going through the news this morning and in reading some articles, reading some headlines, I just kept having the same reaction over and over and over again. I just kept asking the question, this is news? This is news? Like, I tend to think that when something is news, it's new. Like, it's kind of right there in the name, right? That there's something unique, there's something special, there's something extraordinary, there's something unexpected about this that causes us to need to note it and to pay attention to it. I think it was Ted Koppel. And, it's funny, my kids have no idea who Ted Koppel is. But sometimes when I desperately need a haircut, my hair looks like Ted Koppel's hair. But anyway, so I have a fondness in my heart for Ted Koppel. But Ted Koppel once said, a plane landing safely is not news. That when asked, why does the media only cover bad news? Why do they only talk about the tragedies? Well, and his response is, listen, because it's not news if something goes the way it's supposed to go. This is not news. And as I'm reading the news today, I'm kind of wondering, like, okay, this isn't the way things are supposed to go, certainly, for sure. This is not a plane landing safely, but come on. Isn't this exactly what we would expect? Does this surprise anyone? Is anyone going, oh, I had no idea that this was taking place. I had no idea that it would be this way. Is this really news? This is the news? This is news? Exhibit A. Pandora Papers. Have you heard about these? This is the, I think the third or fourth time that a large number of secret financial statements have been gotten, hacked, and leaked to the media. These ones are called the Pandora Papers. It's allegedly supposedly, I guess, the largest data leak of this type, ever. You might remember a few years ago there was what was called the Panama Papers, which was real similar. This is the Pandora Papers. I honestly haven't read deep enough to know why it's called that. But the Pandora Papers show that 35 different world leaders, including current and former presidents of countries and prime ministers and heads of states, along with 300 or so other public officials, government ministers, judges, mayors, people of power and influence around the world, have a whole bunch of secret deals and hidden assets, and they have taken their money and stored it in offshore accounts. They have done things like, apparently the King of Jordan has something like $100 million worth of property in Malibu. And apparently, these leaders around the world have been using tax havens to avoid paying taxes in their own country. They have been using these shady deals to hide money that maybe they have received in inappropriate or corrupt manners, and they have essentially tried to hold a storehouse for themselves should some of these countries, should things go wrong and they find themselves no longer in power, it gives themselves a little safety net, a little nest egg to fall back on. $100 million worth of property in Malibu. Not a bad little nest egg. Interestingly, I probably, there were two pieces of information in this story that I personally found most interesting. One is, that there are those kind of anti-corruption activists and pioneers and leaders who have, challenged these kinds of things, who we find out, are probably hypocrites. Former British Prime Minister, and his name just flew out of my head. What was the name? One of you that's watching. What's the former British Prime Minister? Tony Blair. Tony Blair. There you go. Tony Blair. Producer Dan, you can edit that little Monday morning, brain bubble out of this thing. But Tony Blair, who, has been an anti-corruption person who has consistently campaigned against, during his time in the public eye, consistently campaigned against those who would avoid taxes by using offshore accounts, looks like he did it too. So political leaders are hypocrites. This is news. This is news. The other thing I found kind of interesting is that there are some states in the United States that are now mirroring laws from like Caribbean islands. Like, we have this sense of like, okay, if you get, ultra wealthy, what you're going to do to hide your money is open up a some offshore account in the Cayman Islands or something. They're called offshore accounts because, typically there's, these countries that are really happy to have this money come their way, and they're willing to have, very lenient laws as a result of that. Well, apparently South Dakota has adopted very similar laws mirroring these, hidden Cayman account kind of laws, allowing people to hide their money in South Dakota. That's fascinating to me. I feel like we're not going to be able to call it an offshore account anymore if it's going to South Dakota. Does South Dakota even have, there are no shores in South Dakota. But ultimately, the big question, I read this news story about the Pandora Papers, and I've got to ask the question, and this is like the headline everywhere. This is like the big story. This is the thing everybody's talking about. And I'm looking at this going, this is news? This is news? Wealthy people are hiding their money and avoiding paying taxes? Political leaders are hypocrites? The wealthiest among us might not be the greatest citizens on the planet? This is news? This is not news. Now, granted, we're learning things we didn't know before, but did we really not know it? I think we knew it. It's just confirming. It's not the only example of, me asking myself, this is news. Facebook is in the news. Oh, big news. 60 Minutes interview last night. Big questions about what's going on at Facebook, and the whistleblower was interviewed on 60 Minutes last night. Frances Haugen, who is a product manager at Facebook, involved in, this is, for all of us who don't understand how algorithms work, Frances does, and she gets it. And she has been a whistleblower, revealing some stuff about Facebook, including that Facebook knows that Instagram is bad for teenage girls, and continues to promote it, and particularly to teenage girls, isn't doing anything about it. Facebook knows that its platform is being used and has been used by domestic terrorists wanting to plan insurrections against the United States government and overthrow the duly elected government of our country. And they didn't do anything about it. Facebook knows that misinformation about particularly the election of 2020, but also coronavirus and a whole host of other things, misinformation is being passed around and used deceptively to manipulate people, and they know all about it, and they're doing nothing about it. And Facebook basically is, in the words of the whistleblower, choosing profits over safety. Cares more about making money than it does what is good for its users, its customers, and our culture and society as a whole. This is news? It's news that Facebook doesn't actually care about us? This is news that Facebook puts profits above everything else, like, I don't know, every big corporation does? This is news? Listen, and I'm a Facebook user, and I am regrettably so. Many of you are watching me on Facebook right now. But Facebook's not good for us. Facebook messes with our brain chemistry, and especially when we're, using it first thing in the morning or the last thing before we go to bed at night. There's kicks of serotonin when we're checking to see if somebody has liked our post. And I mean, we know that Facebook is not good for us as individuals. We know that Facebook is not good for our culture with the misinformation that it allows and the divisions that have existed. And we know that Facebook has consistently put its own profits above what is actually beneficial for its users. We keep using it. We keep doing it. And then we, watch 60 Minutes or read the article and go, oh, this is not news. This is not news. It's not good, but it's not news. We all know this. Speaking of companies that are willing to put their profits ahead of everything else, have you heard about the oil spill in California? About 40 miles south of Los Angeles and Huntington Beach, a place where I've been, a place where we've done Vote Common Good events back in 2018. There is 13 square miles of ocean, parts of the coastline that are covered in oil. Because 3,000 barrels of crude oil, which is 126,000 gallons of oil, has leaked into the Pacific Ocean, apparently coming from a production platform operated by Beta Offshore, which is a California subsidy of a Houston-based offshore crude oil producer, Amplify Energy Corp. Oil companies are going to spill oil. Oil spills are going to destroy the marine biology. Dawn is going to put out a whole new set of commercials about how they were there, to clean up the ducks. I'm sure the CEO of Amplify Energy Corp will film a commercial where he, is walking in a field by a fence, trees in the background, talking about, with all this natural green around him, talking about how sorry they are and they're going to do everything to invest in protecting the environment. And it's all blah, blah, blah. When are we going to get to the point where we realize that we are dangerously close to doing irreparable harm to the planet? And if we do irreparable harm to the planet, we're not going to have anywhere to live. We will do irreparable harm to ourselves in the process. And an oil company spilling oil into the ocean, 126,000 gallons of crude oil, killing fish, marine life, coming up on the coastline and covering it in oil because it's so difficult to clean up. I wish this was news, but does this come as any surprise? It's one of those things where it feels at times like it's... I feel this way with like school shootings or with police, stories about police officers killing unarmed black men. I feel at times like, it's just a matter of time before we get the next story like that. Like that's gonna happen again. It's not over. It's gonna happen again. It's just a matter of time until it happens again. And some people will throw their hands in the air and, I can't believe this is happening. And I'm sitting here saying, this is news? Of course. Oil companies have been spilling oil into the ocean and killing our planet, putting, like Facebook does, putting profits above what is good for the rest of us. This is not news. This is not news. It's terrible. Something's got to be done about it. I personally cannot wait for our political leaders to have the chutzpah to pass the Green New Deal so we can begin taking steps to address climate change in an appropriate way. In the meantime, a massive oil spill, killing wildlife, closing beaches, probably ultimately raising gas prices for the rest of us. Thank you very much. We'll probably be the ones who end up paying for it. This is not news. Am I depressing today? I feel like I'm depressing myself. Hopefully I'm not depressing you. I'm just reading the news going, this is not news. This is not news. Speaking of depressing, Supreme Court's back in session. I pulled the screenshot from Reuters because it made me laugh because it said "back in black," which just made me laugh. Anytime you get a little Metallica reference into your news, it's always good. So the Supreme Court's back in session. 9 justices minus 1, 8 justices back at the Supreme Court. Brett Kavanaugh has to zoom in to the Supreme Court hearings today because he's got COVID. So the rest of them are back in their black robes, back in the Supreme Court building. I think this is the first time since the pandemic began that they're back in person. And it's a much different Supreme Court now than it was before the pandemic started. We've got 6 conservative justices, 3 liberals. I might argue that John Roberts is more a bit of a moderate. He's not a moderate when it comes to corporate policy, tax policy, those kinds of things. But he has indicated he's signaled that he's going to be a little bit more moderate on social issues. And the Supreme Court is back, and there are some big cases for them to take up and to talk about, to make decisions about. Some major challenge to abortion rights, the opportunity for Republicans to finally get their dream of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. Because of a Mississippi bill that bans abortion after the 15th week of pregnancy. Interestingly, Roe v. Wade in 1973 was actually a Mississippi case, and case took place in Mississippi. There are other things that are happening. There's some stuff with the NRA. There's gun laws that are going to be talked about. I mean, so the Supreme Court is back in session, and it feels to me like this is the opportunity for the Supreme Court to, threaten the fabric of our nation. So it feels like to me that we once again we have to wait with bated breath to find out, is the Supreme Court going to make everything terrible now? It feels to me like conservatives won their long-standing battle to win control of the Supreme Court. They were underhanded and dirty in the process. Mitch McConnell holding up the confirmation of Merrick Garland. Mitch McConnell ramming through the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett. Brett Kavanaugh getting confirmed to the Supreme Court despite the just tremendously disqualifying allegations against him, not to mention the demeanor he displayed during his confirmation hearings. They did whatever they had to do to win, and they won, and they control the Supreme Court now. And they do it in such great numbers that not even John Roberts, who's a bit of a moderate, can't even restrain them. Even if he votes with the liberals, he can't stop them. I mean, it's bad news. But is it news? Didn't we know this was going to happen? Didn't we know? So we'll see what happens, but I'm not sure it's news. And seems like Democrats can't seem to get their stuff together. So I said to you last week that it was going to be a big week because Nancy Pelosi had indicated that it was time to vote on the infrastructure bill, and along with that was the commitment to also move forward with the Build Back Better agenda spending bill of the president's, and didn't happen. Democrats couldn't get their stuff together. The progressive wing of the party, which had previously had assurances that these two bills would go together, the infrastructure bill along with the Build Back Better agenda bill, which includes a lot of kind of what's called soft infrastructure spending plans, which seek to reinforce the social safety net throughout the country and fully fund in appropriate ways social programs that have been consistently defunded and left to wither by Republican leadership. And progressives had been assured, support the infrastructure bill. So to get all this stuff passed, we got to split these up into two bills. We can't put it all together. So we'll do the infrastructure bill. That's real popular. That's bipartisan. It's passed the Senate. We can get that through. And then as soon as we do that, we'll also pass this Build Back Better agenda bill, this spending bill, which is going to really help American workers, the American economy, by investing in great ways. And we're going to put these, we can't pass them all together, in one bill. We'll make them two bills, but they'll go together and we'll get it done. And progressives were assured that that would be the case. And then there's, moderates, the Joe Manchins of the world, Kristen Simonas of the world, who've indicated that maybe that infrastructure bill is too much money. And if the infrastructure bill at $1 trillion is too much money, then definitely the Build Back Better bill at $3.5 trillion is too much. Over 10 years, by the way, which is the little detail that they, consistently leave out. It's not $3.5 trillion a year. It's not $3.5 trillion immediately. It's $3.5 trillion over 10 years. But progressives essentially got spooked that if they vote for the infrastructure bill first, this one that has bipartisan support now, that was passed by the Senate, has Joe Manchin support, that if they do that, then the Build Back Better agenda bill, the spending bill that is desperately needed in so many ways, that moderates will say, we passed the infrastructure bill, good job us, let's not bother with this other thing. And they'll pull back on it. And instead of having a clear victory and a strong message sent to the American people that President Biden and his administration, in conjunction with a Democratic-led Congress, is moving forward to do what is needed to be done to build back better. A slogan, by the way, that I absolutely hate and think is terrible, but it's nonetheless the slogan that we have to work with. We are doing the thing that needs to be done to build back better. Instead of that strong, positive message happening, just going to be like, well, we kind of went part way. Not even halfway. We just went part way. President Biden went to Capitol Hill last week. People on both sides wondering, what the point of that was. So this week, there's essentially four things that are that you need to watch for. The first of all is a continuing resolution, which a continuing resolution is a bill that gets passed that funds the government for a period of time when they don't have a budget because they can't pass budgets in Congress for whatever reason. So apparently, I think it's Thursday night. It's Friday morning at midnight. So we could wake up Friday morning to a government shutdown if a continuing resolution doesn't get passed. That's what happens. Because there is no budget that funds the government for a full year, they have to pass these continuing resolutions, these stopgap measures, which appropriate money for a short period of time. And they come up to these deadlines. They play chicken with these things every time. And when these things expire, as this one is set to do at midnight on Thursday night, so it's Friday morning, as this thing is going to expire this weekend, they've got to pass another one to keep the government funded, or we get a government shutdown. That's got to happen this week. Another piece of the puzzle, something else that needs to happen this week, is that the debt limit needs to be increased. So there's rules about how much money the government can borrow. And, it's a horrible analogy because the federal government spending is nothing like your home finances and personal finances. So I'm even hesitating, kind of reinforcing that horrible idea with this narrative. But, like on your credit card, you've got a spending limit that you can't go over. We've got a debt limit. We've got a limit on, and we could hit that. I think we're scheduled to hit that. And so it needs to be raised. And frankly, it just needs to be eliminated. And so Republicans are making it difficult on Democrats to be able to raise that. They're using this as an opportunity to score some political points against the president, even though, it needs to be raised because of tax cuts and spending plans passed by the Republicans that are now coming due. And so the debt limit needs to be raised. Republicans, when they were in power, raised the debt limit a number of times. This should be a no big deal kind of thing, but it's an opportunity for Republicans to make Democrats look bad. And so they've got to raise the debt limit. I think the deadline is the 18th. So, fingers crossed that it happens this week. Knowing how things tend to go in Washington, it's going to be the following week, and we're probably going to go right up to the brink before it gets done. And then there's the infrastructure bill that we talked about. It's got this bipartisan support. It's passed the Senate. Nancy Pelosi wants to get it passed in the House. Everybody supports it, but there's the fear, if we pass this, then this social policy reconciliation bill, this Build Back Better bill, is going to get thwarted by the moderates who are, and so, basically progressives are saying this is all the leverage we have. And we want Joe Biden's agenda passed. We want Joe Biden to have a huge victory. We want him to have this, this big signature win to hang his hat on. And if we pass the infrastructure bill, we lose all of our negotiating power, all of our leverage, because these moderates aren't going to pass this much needed bill. They're absolutely right. And so now, instead of Republicans and Democrats playing a game of chicken, it's Democrats and Democrats playing a game of chicken. And is this news? Our political leaders can't seem to get their stuff together and do what is needed to be done for the good of the American people. I'm not so sure this feels like news. Well, is this really news? This has been your edition of Is This Really News on the Common Good podcast today. Listen, my friends, let's take a deep breath. Let's try to shake this off. Let's head out into our Mondays, into our weeks. Regardless of what the headlines are, regardless of what the news says, we can be people who bring common good into our world. Can put the needs of others ahead of ourselves. Look out not just for our own interest, but for the interest of all. So let's do that. We don't have to rely on Facebook or oil companies or the Supreme Court or elected leaders in Washington or political leaders around the world. They exclusively are not the ones who bring the common good into our world. We have that opportunity to do it. So let's do that. Let's make some news as people of the common good. Encourage you to keep listening to the Common Good podcast later this week. I think tomorrow evening there will be a podcast of Facebook Live with an update from the We the People tour. Check that out. And then on Wednesday, the faith team will be talking about issues of faith and the common good. Thank you, my friends, for listening in, and we'll talk again soon.